New York City buzzed beneath the skyline, its heartbeat echoing through the honks, footsteps and murmurs of millions. Among the countless souls who walked its streets every day, one man stood atop the rest, not just in status, but in loneliness. If these stories move you, show your support with a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell. It's wonderful to have you here. Alexander Hayes, 43, was a self-made millionaire. Founder of a groundbreaking tech startup, he had built his empire from a college dorm room to a high-rise office in Manhattan. Alexander had everything money could buy: luxury cars, an apartment overlooking Central Park, invitations to elite galas. But behind the designer suits and sharp jawline was a man aching with emptiness. He had no wife, no children, no real friends. The only companionship he knew was the glow of his phone and the silence of his penthouse. He donated to charities, funded orphanages, and sponsored hospital wings, but nothing ever felt like enough, until one rainy night in December. It was around 2 a.m. when Alexander's car, a sleek black Tesla, rolled to a stop outside a late-night diner in Brooklyn. He'd left a fundraising gala early, his mind restless. A strange impulse told him to drive aimlessly through the city streets, something he hadn't done since his college days. As he walked toward the diner, a faint sound reached his ears, a sound that pierced through the cold wind and traffic hum. A baby crying. At first, he thought it came from a nearby alley. Curious and slightly alarmed, Alexander turned and followed the sound. As he stepped deeper into the narrow alley, the crying grew louder, raw, urgent, helpless. Then he saw it. A torn cardboard box, a dirty blanket, and inside it, a newborn girl. His breath caught in his throat. The child's tiny hands trembled in the cold. Her cheeks were red from crying, her eyes barely open. Someone had left her here to die. Alexander dropped to his knees. He quickly wrapped the baby in his coat and called 911, his voice shaking. The paramedics arrived minutes later, whisking the baby away to the nearest hospital. Alexander rode with them, unable to take his eyes off her. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed that the baby was malnourished, but stable. No identification, no note, just a baby girl with an uncertain future. They asked him, "Are you a relative?" "No," he replied, then paused. "But can I stay with her?" From that night on, something inside Alexander changed. He visited the hospital every day. He watched her grow stronger. He was there when she opened her eyes, when she smiled for the first time. He paid for her treatments, hired the best pediatricians, even brought toys and clothes. He called her Hope. Though the system eventually placed her in foster care, Alexander made sure she was always safe, always cared for, silently, anonymously. He didn't want publicity. He didn't want praise. He just felt connected to her. Years passed. Alexander continued his silent guardianship, watching from afar. But a piece of him ached every time she left one home for another. No family ever kept her. No one ever saw what he saw, that she was special, brilliant, radiant. But even Alexander didn't know the full truth until 16 years later, on another December night, when Hope, now a teenager with fiery eyes and a mind of her own, walked into his life once more, not as a stranger, but as his daughter. Over the years, Alexander watched Hope grow through photographs, school reports, and social worker updates. He never interfered directly, though he could have adopted her at any point. But something always held him back: fear, guilt, the haunting sense that he wasn't worthy of being a father. Hope, on the other hand, had grown into a headstrong, curious, and artistic teen. By 16, she had cycled through 4 foster homes and spent a brief period in a group shelter after a failed placement. Despite it all, she was remarkably resilient, always drawing, always sketching, always asking questions. One of her recurring questions was, "Why did my real parents abandon me?" In one of her foster homes, she found something strange among her paperwork: a hospital document with a handwritten name, Alexander Hayes. She Googled him, and just like that, she found him. his face on Forbes covers, his speeches, his philanthropic empire. Hope's heart pounded as she stared at his photo on her cracked phone screen. She didn't know what this man meant to her, only that he had paid for all her medical care as a baby and continued to fund her needs secretly for years. Why? Who was he? Fueled by a hunger for answers, Hope decided to confront him. It was a snowy Friday evening in Manhattan. Alexander had just finished a board meeting and was stepping into his building's marble lobby when he saw a girl standing by the elevator, shivering, holding a tattered backpack. "Mr. Hayes?" she asked. He turned. "Yes?" She looked up at him with intense eyes. "My name is Hope. I think you knew me once." Alexander's heart stopped. It was her. Her eyes, her voice, it was all the same. Older, sharper, but unmistakably the same baby he had once held in a hospital blanket. I know you," he said softly. Hope pulled out a folded document from her backpack. "You paid my hospital bills. My foster caseworker told me. You visited me, but never stayed." "Who are you to me?" The tension in the air thickened. The receptionist paused, watching them. Alexander waved her away. He led Hope to the penthouse. The ride in the elevator was silent, heavy with everything unsaid. Inside the elegant apartment, Hope stared at the enormous glass windows overlooking Central Park. "This is not what I imagined," she whispered. Alexander offered her tea. "You must have questions." "I do," she replied, "and I want the truth. Were you my father, my uncle, a friend of my real parents?" Alexander sat down across from her, his voice quieter than ever. "I don't know who your mother is. I didn't know anything about you until the night I found you." He told her everything. The alley, the rain, the cardboard box. How she looked at him that night. How he never forgot. How he kept his distance because he felt unfit to raise her. Tears welled in her eyes. "So, you were just a stranger who didn't walk away?" "Yes," he said. "But you were never just a baby to me." But the story didn't end there. The next week, Alexander ordered a private DNA test, hoping for peace of mind, for her and for himself. When the results arrived, his hands trembled as he opened the envelope. 99.98% match. Hope wasn't just a child he had saved. She was his biological daughter. Alexander was devastated. Somewhere, years ago, someone had hidden a part of his life from him. A woman he once loved, a brief relationship forgotten. He couldn't recall. But the fact was undeniable. The guilt crushed him. All those years, she was alone in the system. His daughter, his flesh and blood. Hope, meanwhile, felt conflicted. The man she once thought might be her savior was now her father. And he hadn't come for her. Not once. "You could have adopted me," she said tearfully one night. "You had everything. And I had no one." Alexander knelt in front of her, eyes glistening. "I thought I wasn't ready. I thought you'd be better off with a real family. I was wrong." "Yeah," she said, pulling back. "You were." The emotional distance between them was now greater than ever, even though they shared the same DNA. In the following weeks, news of Hope's arrival began leaking to the press. "Tech tycoon linked to abandoned child." Headlines speculated, and rumors swirled. Alexander refused to comment. Hope stayed out of the spotlight, but the pressure mounted. His investors were nervous. His board of directors questioned his judgment. One even suggested he send the girl away until things quieted down. That was the moment Alexander made a choice. He stepped away from the company. "I'm not losing her again," he told his assistant. "I've made too many mistakes already." He brought Hope to live with him full-time. They started therapy together. He helped her enroll in an elite art program. Slowly, very slowly, she started to soften. But scars don't heal overnight, not the kind that are stitched into childhood. It was a Sunday afternoon in spring when everything changed again. Hope had been living with Alexander for 3 months. Their relationship, though still complicated, had grown warmer. She no longer called him Mr. Hayes. Sometimes she called him Alex. And once, just once, she called him Dad. He never forgot it. But the peace they were beginning to build was shattered when a letter arrived in the mail. It was anonymous, no return address. Inside was a single photo, old, grainy, and creased. It showed a woman holding a newborn baby. On the back, in faded ink, were just 5 words. "She is yours. Forgive me." The handwriting was familiar. Alexander stared at the note for hours before pulling out a dusty box from a shelf in his closet. It contained old letters, college photos, and one picture in particular, him with a woman named Rachel Thomas, an artist he had dated briefly 17 years ago. She disappeared from his life abruptly after telling him she was moving to the West Coast. He never heard from her again. Could it be? Was Rachel the mother? He dug deeper. Using a private investigator, he traced Rachel's last known address to a small town in Pennsylvania. Within a week, the investigator returned with grim news. Rachel had died 16 years ago. Car accident, no known family, no obituary. Her belongings had been auctioned. Among them, baby clothes, sketchbooks, and a journal with pages torn out. The timeline matched, the note, the photo. Hope's mother had tried to reach him, but never succeeded. And perhaps she had left the baby somewhere she believed he'd find her. But fate had other plans. Alexander shared the discovery with Hope, gently. He showed her the photo, the note, and a few sketches signed Rachel T., some of which looked strikingly similar to Hope's own art style. Hope stared at the page, silent. "This is her," she whispered. "She looks kind." "She was," Alexander said, his voice catching. "We weren't together long, but she was unforgettable." For a long time, Hope said nothing. Then she reached out, took the photo, and held it to her chest. "She didn't throw me away," she said, her voice cracking. She tried to leave me with you." Alexander wrapped his arms around her. "She didn't resist. She loved you," he said. "And I do too." It was the first time he'd said it out loud. But healing wasn't a straight path. Soon after the revelation, Hope began struggling in school again. Her drawings turned darker. She became withdrawn. Therapy sessions became tense. "I'm tired of being broken," she confessed one day. "I keep thinking it's going to feel better, but it doesn't." Alexander, sitting beside her, said softly, "Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to move forward, even when it hurts." Hope stared at him. "What if I don't know how? Then we'll figure it out together." That same week, Alexander invited Hope to visit Rachel's hometown. He wanted her to see the house where her mother had lived, the places she'd walked. They found a few of her old canvases at a thrift shop nearby, bold, colorful, passionate pieces. One had a name scribbled on the corner, Hope. Tears streamed down Hope's face. In that moment, something shifted. Hope returned home, inspired. She began working on a large painting, one she refused to show Alexander until it was finished. Meanwhile, Alexander quietly established a foundation in Rachel's name, the Rachel Thomas Project, which supported young artists from foster care backgrounds. He launched it on Hope's 17th birthday and invited her to speak. At first, she refused. "I don't want to be your charity case," she snapped. "You're not," he replied. "You're the reason it matters." She didn't say anything. But the next day, she showed up at the event, wearing a simple black dress and holding a rolled-up canvas. "I painted this for her," she told the audience. "And for me, and for anyone who ever felt unwanted." She unveiled a stunning portrait of a woman holding a baby beneath a streetlight, an image full of light, sorrow, and hope. The crowd went silent, then erupted into applause. Alexander couldn't hold back his tears. In that moment, Hope wasn't just surviving, she was becoming whole. Hope's painting became a quiet sensation within the local art community. A journalist from the New York Times featured it in a piece about the launch of the Rachel Thomas Project, calling it the voice of a generation wrapped in canvas. But for Hope, the acclaim meant little. What mattered most was something deeper, the slow but steady unraveling of her pain, her confusion, and her guardedness. For the first time, she wasn't surviving. She was living. Alexander, too, underwent his own transformation. He had always been a man of logic and numbers. He built companies, bought stocks, launched tech innovations. But learning to be a father required something else, something unfamiliar: patience, vulnerability, humility. There were days when he messed up, when he pushed too hard or didn't say enough, days when hope shut him out again, days when old wounds reopened. But each time, he chose to stay. Love isn't just saying the right thing, his therapist once told him. It's staying when things get hard. And he did. One particularly cold night, Alexander found Hope on the rooftop, sitting alone with a blanket, gazing at the stars. He brought her hot cocoa and sat beside her. She didn't speak at first. Then, without looking at him, she said, "Sometimes I still feel like that baby in the box, like I was never meant to be here." Alexander gently took her hand. "I used to feel that way too," he said, "even with all my success, until the night I found you." She turned to him, eyes shining. "I think we saved each other," she whispered. As months passed, Hope began to truly thrive. She won a scholarship to a prestigious art school upstate. She made friends, formed connections, even began mentoring other foster youth through the foundation. But she still had one final fear. "What if I fail?" she asked Alexander the night before moving into the dorms. He smiled and hugged her. "Then I'll be there to pick you up every time." She squeezed him tightly. "Thank you, Dad." The word hit him like sunlight after years of winter. He'd waited so long to hear it, and now it wasn't forced. It was real. Meanwhile, Alexander rediscovered parts of himself that had long been buried. He reconnected with his estranged sister. He started painting in secret, small abstract works, often in blues and golds. He donated anonymously to shelters and funded foster education programs across the city, and in the quiet of his penthouse, a photo now sat on his mantle: Rachel, and beside her, Hope, at age 17, holding a brush, smiling. A family, formed not by plans, but by fate. In one of her last letters before college, Hope wrote, "I used to think life was just what happened to you. Now I know it's also what you choose to build, moment by moment. You chose to stay. I choose to believe." That sentence became the slogan for the next wave of the Foundation's campaign. And in homes across the country, kids who had lost everything found comfort in Hope's story. Her painting was printed in foster centers, her interviews went viral, and her voice became one of advocacy and strength. She wasn't just the girl from the box. She was a symbol of what love, real, flawed, stubborn love, can build. Hope's first year at the New York School of Art was more than a test of talent. It was a test of endurance. She juggled intense coursework, self-doubt, and the pressure of being the girl from the trash can, a label the media had once cruelly used. But she was more than that now. She was Hope Hayes, and one particular assignment would bring everything she had lived through to a final, cathartic eruption. Her final project for the semester was called The Beginning of Me. Each student was tasked with creating a piece that told the story of where they came from. Most students painted cities, homes, or family dinners. Hope painted an alley, a cold, grey alley behind a Brooklyn diner, wet from rain. In the middle of it, a cardboard box. Inside the box, a newborn baby wrapped in a crimson scarf. But that wasn't all. Hovering over the scene was the ghost-like silhouette of a young woman, Rachel, with tear-filled eyes and outstretched hands. And behind her, a man, Alexander, kneeling beside the box, bathed in golden light. The painting was massive, raw, visceral, vulnerable, and it would soon become the centerpiece of the school's public gallery night. Alexander attended the event, dressed in a simple gray coat, holding a bouquet of daisies, Rachel's favorite flower. As he entered the gallery, he was overwhelmed. People were gathered in hushed awe in front of one painting, his daughter's. He approached slowly. And when he saw it, truly saw it, he broke down, not just because of the art, but because of the story it told. It was his story, and hers, and Rachel's. In strokes of pain and brilliance, Hope had painted the moment that changed all of their lives, the night that gave them all a second chance. The curator invited Hope to speak. Nervous, she walked up to the mic, her voice trembling slightly. "This painting isn't just about where I came from," she began. "It's about the people who fought for me, even when I didn't know it. My mom, who gave me life and tried to protect me in the only way she could. And my dad," she turned toward Alexander, "who found me when no one else would, who stayed, who gave me my name, my voice, and my hope." People were crying in the crowd. Some clapped, some simply stood in silence. Alexander stepped forward and hugged her tightly in front of everyone. No words were needed. But even amidst this triumph, an unexpected visitor arrived. After the event, an older woman approached Hope. She introduced herself as Margaret Lane, a former friend of Rachel's. "I was with her during her pregnancy," Margaret said softly. "She wanted to reach out to you, Mr. Hayes, but she didn't know how. She was afraid you'd reject her or take the baby away. She was scared and alone." Margaret handed Hope a small box. Inside were torn pages from Rachel's journal, pages that had been salvaged. They were filled with entries about Hope, about her laughter in the womb, about the dream Rachel had of one day showing her how to paint, about Alexander. "He would be a better father than I'll ever be a mother," one line read. "But will he ever forgive me for disappearing?" Hope's hands trembled as she read. "I forgive her," she whispered. "So do I," Alexander said. That night, they stood on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city. Hope held Rachel's journal close to her chest. "Do you ever think she sees us?" Hope asked. Alexander looked up at the stars. "I hope so. I think she'd be proud." Hope leaned her head against his shoulder. "She gave me life, but you gave me a future." Months passed. Hope's painting was selected for a national tour of youth art exhibitions. She was invited to speak at conferences, interviewed by magazines, and awarded a scholarship for her remarkable ability to transform pain into beauty. But it wasn't the fame that changed her. It was the peace. The nightmares faded. The fear of abandonment quieted. The ache of not belonging slowly gave way to something stronger, rootedness. Alexander, now semi-retired, found new purpose. He no longer obsessed over company numbers or market shares. His new business card simply read, "Alexander Hayes, father and advocate, believer in second chances." He spent most days traveling with Hope to her gallery events, managing the Rachel Thomas Foundation, and mentoring other wealthy individuals on how to give with heart. He even took art classes, terrible at first, but Hope never laughed too hard. They began a Saturday tradition, brunch and paint. Some days they talked for hours about life, about Rachel, about love and purpose. Other days, they painted in silence, side by side, in the sunlit corner of the apartment. They were no longer strangers, nor two wounded souls crossing by chance. They were family. On Hope's 18th birthday, Alexander handed her a key. "To what?" she asked. He smiled. "To your mother's old studio. I bought the building." Hope gasped. The space had been abandoned for years. But now, freshly renovated, it stood as a sanctuary, filled with Rachel's original sketches, a gallery of Hope's best work, and a corner reserved for Alexander's proud but clumsy paintings. He called it Studio Hope. That night, they held a private exhibit inside the studio. Friends, donors, fellow artists, and foster kids all came. Lights twinkled, music played, the walls radiated life, and near the entrance stood a simple sign, "From an alley of despair to a home of light." Hope walked the halls, watching as visitors admired her and her mother's work, side by side. A small girl approached her, no older than 7. "You painted all this?" the child asked. "Some of it," Hope said, kneeling down, "but most of it came from something bigger than me, from pain, from love, from never giving up." The girl smiled and hugged her. Later that night, Alexander and Hope stood at the entrance, arms around each other, looking at the crowd inside the studio. "You know," Alexander whispered, "sometimes I still think about that night. The box, the rain. I had no idea what I was bringing home." Hope looked up at him, smiling. "You were bringing home everything." He kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for letting me be your dad. Thank you for never walking away." They stood there holding each other as the stars blinked quietly above New York City. No longer lost, no longer broken, but found in the most unexpected way. 2 years later, spring in Brooklyn. The alley still exists. Tucked behind a diner in a quieter part of the city, the same alley where a baby once cried into the night is now transformed. Where the trash cans once stood, there's now a mural. Painted in vibrant, sweeping strokes is the image of a man kneeling beside a box under moonlight. Above him hovers the transparent shape of a woman, reaching down with both sadness and peace in her eyes. And in the man's arms, a baby wrapped in red. The mural is signed in the corner, HH, for Rachel, for the ones who stay. Every year on the anniversary of that fateful night, Hope and Alexander visit the alley. They bring flowers, they light a candle, and they sit together, quietly, gratefully. That space, once a symbol of abandonment, has become a monument to love, to chance, to healing. Hope, now 20, is a rising star in the art world. Her solo exhibitions sell out in days. She's bold, unafraid to tackle the rawest emotions through color and form, but she never forgets where she started. Her paintings often tell stories of the forgotten, foster kids, street children, survivors, and every time she speaks at an event, she begins with the same line. I wasn't born in a hospital. I was found in a box, but I wasn't trash. I was a miracle waiting to be seen. And audiences listen because they know it's true. Alexander, now fully retired, spends his days immersed in purpose. He runs outreach programs. He teaches business ethics at a local university. And once a month, he hosts a dinner for teens aging out of the foster system, each one receiving a starter scholarship, emotional support, and something even more rare, belief. He no longer measures success in profits or valuations. He measures it in people, in changed lives, in second chances, in the face of his daughter, his brightest creation. One evening, Hope and Alexander sat in the garden behind Studio Hope, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if you hadn't found me?" He looked at her, eyes soft. "I think," he said, "you still would have become something incredible, but I would have spent my life missing something I never knew I needed." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad it was you," she said. "In that alley, that night." "So am I," he whispered. As the stars blinked awake above New York City, father and daughter sat in silence, no longer haunted by the past, but held by it, redeemed by it, and forever changed because of it. Your company here makes all the difference. Subscribe to the channel and come experience more touching stories with us. God bless you and see you in the next video.